Hello, welcome to Veteran Voice. My name is Larry Mcullaugh. I'll be your host today. Glad that you tuned in to watch us because we've got some very special guests with us today. First, I'd like to introduce, as we always do, ladies first, Mrs. Sandy Hart. Sandy, you're welcome to the program today. A lot of people may recognize Sandy for the work that she's done on the World War II trip to Washington, D.C. a couple of years back, and she told me as soon as I introduced her that she had something she wanted to say, so
well,
I'll let you.
I want to say that there's been a lot of interest since the trip, but we've done other trips. We may do other trips in the future, but the trip wouldn't have happened if other people hadn't been involved. I've said that from the beginning. This trip was not done by me. It was just thought up by me. And one of the things that happened, I've said from the beginning, was Vietnam vets pitched in and was interested in getting these men who were their fathers and their uncles of the past. The two men that I have with me today that we'll introduce in a minute both had sons who served in Vietnam. So there's a closer proximity than people realize. I had done a piece a while back, and I brought it in for Reason Day. It said, "Welcome home, Vietnam vets. I was always proud of your efforts. I was always grateful to have you home. You're my generation, my youth. The treatment you deserved has always been a part of my sadness. We didn't know what to say or do when you came home, so we let the wrong people speak instead. All we could do is pray for you for strength and comfort. You have always been heroes. Recently, we heard from you like no other time. My heart ached as I heard the former Vietnam prisoners of war speak for the first time of the enormous pain they suffered, not only just of body, but also of mind and spirit. I know many who still cannot speak of the horrors they suffered, but enough was said by some to open eyes. You left our country as young boys and returned as men who were never fully understood, never really appreciated or comforted for the service you did for our country. No matter how someone felt about the war or the decisions made by our leaders, one fact we know: you served our country and others honorably. Even if you came home wounded, in wheelchair or in coffin, you will always stand tall in honor. Thank you for everything you did in the service of your country. You won. Welcome home, Vietnam heroes." I want to bring that for a couple of reasons. One, because it's a good reminder because of what our young people are going through now for our country. We're proud of them as we were proud of you. And Veterans Day, you received an award, and I said it was long overdue. Because we know what you do behind the lines that you don't take credit for. But we have our own WWII DC. In fact, this is the first one we're giving out. Recognition Award, presented to Larry Mcullaugh, Vietnam veteran, for your never-ending support of veterans of all generations. We appreciate your efforts in honoring our heroes. We consider you a hero for your lifelong service to our country. In order to have heroes tomorrow, we must honor the heroes of yesterday and today. Picture was chosen of the buses as they went through Arlington Cemetery because I said that moment had more impact in ways than even the memorial did when we went out there. So we thank you.
Oh, Sandy, I don't know what to say. That is, oh boy, you really caught me off guard here. And you spelled my name right, that's rare. Thank you very much. I will treasure this, and I mean that very, very much. It means a lot to me, and I don't
treasured us.
I don't think I really do very much. I just do what I want to do that makes me feel good about myself and helping other people. And it was fellas like this that inspired me and my father to serve my country. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now, let's introduce the two fellas that we've got with us today. A couple of World War II veterans who I know that you spent some time with and had a lot of fun with. And on the left is Earl Gidcumb. Earl, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here. And I understand you did have a son in Vietnam also.
Yes, I did.
Well, I'm feeling more and more comfortable all the time. And Maurice Gibson. Excuse me, Maurice, I've known your son, who's also Maurice, and we call him Dale or Cowboy, for probably 20 years now.
Right.
We spent a lot of time together, and I see you every Veterans Day.
Yeah.
Welcome to the program. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Sandy, I know that you put together a trip that started out as something small to go to Washington, D.C. and see the memorial for the World War II veterans. And it kind of started snowballing. And by the time it got to where it was going, I remember you would call me from time to time, and you were just in a tizzy, and I would say, "Now settle down, and everything's going to work out." And you ended up pulling off something that no
Well,
one thought you could do. Tell us about that.
many times it was you that called me. There were bad days, and I said it was almost like ESP that all of a sudden the phone would ring and it was you on the phone because I don't know whether you heard in town or something that somebody was putting pressure on me. I don't know, but you would call at just the right time. The idea of the trip didn't start on purpose. It started with an owner of the newspaper saying, "Sandy, can you throw together can you grab a vet and throw together a story about a vet?" Because they'd almost forgotten Veterans Day. And I felt that was terribly disrespectful because who was I to do something for the vets? You know, I don't know the first thing about being an expert about writing about their stories or doing anything for them. If I didn't do it, it wasn't going to be in there, was the circumstances. And it was the beginning of the wildest years since. Getting to know these guys, getting to travel with them. It went from the first trip at the memorial. We made it to the memorial itself, and we took 17 bus loads, and we left with 517 World War II vets, and as you know, one of them didn't make it. He died the second day out, but they said that he was living a dream, and that if he had stayed home, he would have died alone at home. And instead, he was in the middle of a real dream. So I guess we can be grateful for that. The other 516 made it with, I take that back. I said 517. That's right. 516 made it. There was 815 people, counting the bus drivers, on that trip. And there was
17 bus loads, wasn't it?
17 bus loads pulling around that all at once. We just kept saying, I said, "Is this all of them? Is this all of them?" And all of a sudden a call came in. We still have, 4 or 5 more buses coming. And we just kept filling and filling it. And they were the first ones to sing in the new memorial. The new memorial, it wasn't officially opened, but it was open, and they were the first really big group that was in there, and they broke into song shortly after going in there.
Boy, that
And,
must have been an amazing
It was.
thing.
It was just. There isn't words to describe how we felt about it. But I thought it would end there, and then that September, another bunch of them wanted to go, and I said, "Well, hold it down to 2 buses this time." They paid their own way. They said, "If you go, we'll pay our own way. We just want to go back with you." And I said, "Why don't you go with someone that knows what they're doing?" And they said, "We heard you're more fun." You know, of course, the ones that went with it already knew that we had a ball together. But and then there was another one. Even remember when the memorial? When the reunion came up this year, that there was a handful that still had to go back, and Ray rented a van and took them so that they could get out there. But then we had the big trip to Europe, the D-Day tour. And again, it was not anything I ever thought that I would be able to do. And we went with heroes. We went in bunkers. I actually walked down into a bunker, and I realized that I was walking in the footsteps of the Nazis that had done this. The whole story unfolding before my eyes. They made me see what they saw back then. And to go down there and be at the vantage point of the Nazis and to see where they were and what they were seeing of that beach. Of course, now the beach is all calm. The biggest thing that I was able to see, this was the destruction back then. And the beaches were just full of our men having to go up there, and it doesn't show the bodies, the thousands of bodies. They gave everything for us. We don't realize in this country what they did for us. We don't realize the impact of what they did for us. To go over there and to hear people talk about our World War II veterans, the way that we should feel about them, And these were not the people they liberated. These were not the children of the people they liberated. In many cases, these were the grandchildren of the people that were liberated by our World War II vets. They cried, they hugged us, they told these men how much they loved them and appreciated what they did for their country. And I think that's how we should feel here. When we went to the cemetery, the American cemetery, the first thing you saw was the flags. The second thing you knew when you stepped off was the music, the tribute being played all the time in behalf of our World War II veterans. These are volunteers. They're out there all the time tending to the graves and taking care of the tribute that they feel our men deserve that didn't come home.
So the people that were helped in World War II by our soldiers are actually respected a lot more than we here in this country.
They show more respect.
Well,
they show more honor.
Since the war never actually got to this country, I mean, I know there were a lot of sacrifices made. You know, people, we had Rosie the Riveter, as we talked about earlier, and the rationing of sugar and coffee and these type of things. But and so people feel like they did their part here, but they didn't see their homes being destroyed. They didn't see the bodies, the things that these people saw. Plus, they probably left history the way it is instead of, well, how shall I put this, trying to revise it and trying to make us feel bad about dropping the bomb and, oh, you terrible Americans and all that garbage. You know, war is war and you win it any way that you can. And I know that I've always had the utmost respect for World War II veterans. My father was one, was a paratrooper. And that's why, like I said earlier, a lot of us were inspired to, you know, if the country needs us, we're going to go ahead and do it. So, you know, what you've done with World War II vets is great. Speaking of the vets, let's start with you. What branch of the service did you go into, and when did you go in? How exactly did that come about?
Well, in 1943, I had was in my last year of high school, and on May the 23rd of 43, I graduated. And 2 days later, I was in the Navy. At that point in my life, I saw no way to get out of going to service. It was a matter of going on a voluntary basis or being drafted. And I chose to go in the Navy. And I ended up in Great Lakes Naval Training Station. And I spent a couple of months there taking the normal training. And then they sent me from there to San Diego. And then from San Diego, they sent me back to New Orleans. And then in New Orleans, I picked up an LST 218, and we went down through by Cuba, down through, stopped in Coca-Cola, Panama for a night, went through the Panama Canal, and wound up in Honolulu and at the Pearl Harbor. Now this took us 38 days on this ship because these LSTs are flat bottoms. They can be launched in, I think, about 2 foot of water, because they would go in on the beach and drop the lid down and unload equipment and men. But at this point is when I went aboard the USS Indianapolis. And this is really where my naval career started. When I went aboard, they put you on a quarterdeck and they asked for volunteers, anybody could run a typewriter, and I just got fresh out of high school, so I ended up volunteering. Right away my hand went up, you know. I could see something coming out of that. And you know, normally you don't volunteer in service, but I thought that was a great opportunity. And so I ended up in the storekeeper's department, in the payroll department. And at that point, why, then, I don't know how much detail you want, but then we started in our, we carried Raymond Spruance, Admiral Raymond Spruance, and the Indianapolis was his flagship. And all of his operations were directed from that flagship. And then the Indianapolis itself, the ship, during the war, had 10 battle stars. 5 of them I earned while I was on the ship. And the first battle I was involved in was Tarawa, where we lost so many Marines, as you all remember. But you know, I was talking to someone the other day recently about the war in the Navy was so much different being aboard a ship and fighting a war than for example, what Morris, the way he fought it. There's probably many times that our ship killed a lot of Japanese by the fact that we would bombard with 3 turrets of 8-inch guns for hours on end, and then 5-inch guns, and so there had to be a lot of deaths attributed to this. But it's not like seeing someone actually hand-to-hand combat. And for my money, the fellows that the Marines and the Army and the Air Force and the people that got involved in the hand-to-hand combat were the ones that really were the heroes of this war. I think they needed us because we protected them and we bombarded and prepared the land, the islands for them for invasion, but it was an altogether different war.
Well, that's the thing about all the branches working together. I know when I was in Vietnam, we had occasion to use Navy guns that were out in the Gulf of Tonkin. Yeah. And, you know, we could call in from fire bases that were closer, but sometimes they couldn't get it adjusted right. But boy, when you called those Navy guns in, you talk about hitting right where they want it. So, I mean, it's like, I'm sure the people in the boats were well, the real guys, the tough soldiers, the one out in the field. But when you're out in the field and the Navy's dropping it right where you need it, you're really glad that those guys are out there doing their job too. So it's a matter of all working together.
I think we all had our thing that we had to do, and that was ours.
I guess that's why we won, isn't it?
You wrote about the count, though. I mean, we talk about what we lose in battle, and how many with the Marines did we lose at that particular battle?
I think at Tarawa there was around 7,000 or 8,000 Marines lost on that first go-round.
My goodness.
They thought they were prepared, but they were ill prepared. They just didn't understand the way the Japanese fought, their method of warfare. And I know that I went over on the island afterwards, after we had secured it, and you could see Japanese body parts every place. But what intrigued me was the fact that you would see guns on a sled, and they would fire at us, and then they'd move the gun. And this is why we were unable a lot of times to zero in on them, because you'd get a reading on that gun, and the next thing you know, they'd move. And we lost, and then there was a lot of coral reefs that they didn't know how to deal with. So there was many things we learned the hard way in Tarawa.
Very frustrating, I imagine.
Yeah.
Maurice, tell us about what branch of the military you went into and how you went in and training, and give us a little background on that if you would.
Okay, 1943 is when I went in. I had married about 3 months earlier, and it was July the 10th. I was 18, and I got a call to go register, so I went and registered. And then, I don't know, it was like 30 or 40 days later, I went into service. And then the 91st Infantry Division is where I went, 5th Army. And we went to Africa, our first stop. Went to Oran and did a lot of cleanup there. And we only stayed there about 3 months, I guess. Then we went to Sicily. And we were in Sicily, and we was in combat in Sicily. And then that didn't last but about 3 months or less. And then we went on over into Italy. It was up around Rome. Well, it was past Rome where we went into combat. And we was all the way through Italy on 65 through the mountains, and fought all the way through. And as Earl mentioned a while ago about how they backed up the infantrymen, that's wonderful, because if it hadn't been for the planes and all the branches of service that really helped us out, why, we would have been in bad trouble. But we were fighting a bunch of, and especially after we got on up in northern Italy, we were fighting a bunch of Polish boys. They, some of them were but 12, 13 years old. And I know me and another guy, well, this was right at the end of the war when they were surrendering so fast. It was a whole division surrendered to me and another guy. And 90% of them were, I'd say, 12, 14-year-old boys. Oh, they were just tickled to death to surrender. They were so proud to have a chance to surrender.
So you ended up doing your fighting in Africa and in Europe, and you were like South Pacific.
All Pacific, yeah.
So you guys got to fight everybody. You got to fight the Japanese and the Germans between the two of you.
Where were you when you were taken prisoner of war?
I was in,
POW?
I was in, Po Valley in Italy. We was just entering Po Valley. That was getting close to the end of the war. And when they took me and I believe it was 8 other guys, 9 of us. When they took us, we were in a spearhead, and they couldn't get us back into Germany. So we were there, and this was wintertime. I mean, it was 20 below zero. It was cold. So we didn't have anything to eat, only go out. They'd take us out at night, and we'd dig in them Germans' gardens and dig potatoes and stuff like that. And that's all we had to eat. And one night, we was going through this little town to the outskirts of it, where the gardens were, and a big horse had just got knocked down by a mortar round or artillery round. I said, boys, we'll eat tonight. We came back through town. Why, I got one of them Germans to let me borrow his knife. He let me have his knife. And I cut us off some steaks. And oh man, that was good.
That was some good eating.
You ain't kidding, it was good eating, yeah. It was 64 days I was captured.
Oh boy.
And then we was recaptured by our own troops, you know. And
now, did they let you in your tour of duty when you were repatriated, or did you continue to fight after?
Oh yes, yeah, we went right back to our unit, yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
so they just say, you POW, that's all right. Now you can get back here.
Yeah, no, they needed all of us at that time because they were really surrendering so fast that we were all just, we was working day and night.
The enemy saw that the writing was on the
finishing
wall.
up the war, yeah. And here is where the Germans surrendered. There's a paper on it, how they surrendered. And then here's one on Japan too, where all the men there, they signed all that out on the ship.
So that war went on long enough that we finally were able to, after D-Day, get it done.
Yeah, right.
Boy, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now I want to get back to something with you. You say you were on the USS Indianapolis.
Yes,
did you meet fellas that were on the Indianapolis? As a lot of people may or may not know, you and I know, of course, that. Why don't you go ahead and tell the story of what happened to the Indianapolis?
I'd like to take this opportunity to tell as brief as possible the story of the Indianapolis. I went aboard it on October the 31st of 43 and got off of it on September the 1st, 44. It was sunk July the 30th, 1945. The ship had, at that time, it had 1,196 people on it, sailors. It had one passenger that was a friend of Captain McVeigh that he had picked up and was going to carry him back to Guam. But anyway, the actual crew was 1,196 men. And the night that the Japanese submarine sunk it, the I-58, he sunk it. He fired 6 torpedoes, and 2 of them sunk it, and it went down in less than 15 minutes. Now this was a heavy cruiser, and it's quite a large ship. And at that point in time, the captain was not taking a zigzag course because it was the captain's discretion whether he did or not. And the ship was not zigzagging, but it was dark. But there was enough light that the Japanese submarine was able to spot the ship and sink it. Now, at that point in time, there was 1,196 boys, officers and men that had to abandon ship. If you read the books, there's been at least 15 books written on the tragedy. It all happened so quickly that a lot of them were not prepared. A lot of them were at ease. They were in their bunks asleep. And then they started to abandon ship. And before they could get everybody in the water that was going to get in it, 800 of them went down with it. And the final number was 317 that was left in the water. Well, there was more than that, but there was only 317 survived. I think there was around 400 and some odd in the water. 317 survived. But the tragedy of the entire thing was that the Navy knew that the ship was in that area. They knew that it was missing. It had not arrived at its destination at a given time that they were designated to be there, and they let it slip by. You know, there's so many details I don't want to go into, but it was strictly a comedy of errors made by people that didn't really care what happened to the USS Indianapolis at that point in time. But anyway, they did end up with 317 surviving. There's been several books written about it. One of them was written here locally by Turner Publishing. Mr. Turner put this first one out several years ago. I forgot now when it was done. And then the one that's really worth buying and reading is the one that's written by the survivors themselves. It's only 370. This is the individual account by each person that cared to participate. They would send their write-up to Paul Murphy, the chairman, out in Colorado, and his wife would assemble it and edit it and get it ready. But this book ended up being a great book because it gives you each individual's view of the time it was hit, how he got off, how he survived in the water, and how he was finally rescued. This book is worth buying. Now, over the period of time, there was 26 Kentucky boys served on the USS Indianapolis. The last one that I know of that passed away was a dentist in Mayfield, Kentucky. And now I don't know of any that from the state of Kentucky that served on it. I think they've all passed away. But one of the survivors was born and raised in Golden Pond, Kentucky, Edgar Harrell. Now this is his book. That his son actually wrote the book, but what they would do, his son would get information from his dad, Edgar, and he would write it, and then Dad would send him something else, and they'd go back and forth, and so when they finally got the book published. But it's called Out of the Depths. It's a story of a man that trusted totally and wholly in God. He told me on many occasions, and Edgar's a good friend of mine, he told me on many occasions, he said, Earl said, I had no question that I was going to survive this. He said, I put my hands in the Lord's hands, and that's from the time that the ship was hit till the time I was picked up. He said, I knew that I was going to be picked up. So if you want to really know about how to survive 4.5 days in the water, read Edgar Harrell's book.
I would recommend to our audience that if they don't know very much about the USS Indianapolis to get one of these books, especially the one only 317 survived. You'll see some stories of some true heroes that went through some tough times. Well, fellas, we've gone through the first half hour. We still got things to talk about, other experiences. Sandy, I know that you're chomping at the bit. Get back in there and talk some more about the trip. So we're going to take just a short break here and let the people at home go get some cold pizza and a soft drink and go to the bathroom. So we're going to take a little break here. We'll be right back with more Veteran Voice. The graphics that you just saw on your screen can put you in touch with Sandy Hart in case there's anyone out there that's interested in making one of the trips to the World War II Memorial. If you'll contact Sandy, she can pass on the information, or I would imagine if anyone would like to volunteer to get involved and help Sandy, she would appreciate that also. Let's talk about the trip to D.C. a little bit. We've got a little background on the fellows here. Now let's talk about the trip to D.C. and what it meant to you and what it meant to them.
The trip to D.C. was a lesson for me, a continuing lesson. There was something I want to bring up really fast, and people can go to their encyclopedias or their computers to find out more about it. The things that they brought up at different times was Tony McAuliffe, and look up where the general who said nuts to the Germans, and it's worth hearing the story. So I'd rather them look it up themselves and read the whole story. This little toy was a cricket. Just a toy is all I would know. But different guys had told me about it. It's talked about all the time, wasn't it? The cricket that helped save us during World War II, during D-Day. And it was our 101st Airborne Division that signaled each other with this. Mm-hmm. And the Germans had no idea, the Nazis had no idea what they were up to. And they knew the whereabouts of each other through this little, what we would consider a toy, invaluable to them. I've learned about the Tuskegee Airmen and the Navajo Code Talkers. Mm-hmm. But what's some other things that you've told me about? I didn't know about the ship. I didn't know about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. One thing I'd like to say about going to the memorial was when I saw the stars. Yes. That really, really got to me. All the deaths, 500,000 men that lost their lives, and that was I think the most touching part of the whole scene. But it really, I just couldn't get away from it for a while. I just had to stand there and think about all the guys that I knew that I really consider them to be the heroes. They're the ones that...
I'd never seen that many men of your generation cry. And they would go from crying to laughing to hugging. Right. There was just so much emotion out there shared. The star, that was the wall that they spent a lot of time at, was in front of the stars.
I think the biggest meaning to me was the fact that I got to go and see all of the World War II veterans represented, because up to that point there wasn't anything to really recognize us. I'm not saying that we deserved a lot of recognition, but they had built memorials to other wars, Korea and Vietnam and what have you. But when Sandy first come out with the idea of going up there, I thought, well, it sounds good on paper, but at that point in time, I didn't know the sheer determination that this lady has. She's the epitome of determination. if you ever want a job done, give it to Sandy Hart. But I want to mention one thing. The memorial was great. I got a great deal out of being there, and I got a great deal out of seeing the pillars representing each state. There was so much to absorb, you know. The location itself was fantastic. But I think the one thing that really sticks in my mind and will stick in my mind until I pass on was, I don't know if some of you may remember John Hornsby. At one time was mayor of Paducah, and he had a son named Roger. Mm-hmm. And Roger and my son were in Vietnam at the same time. And at that particular time, my son was stationed at Da Nang, and Roger was out in the infantry in combat and got killed. And they brought him into the Air Force base there at at Da Nang, and my son was called over to identify him. But I think the thing that struck me most, and I'll always remember, is we were at the memorial, and Sandy had it planned to go to the Vietnam Memorial, but the time kept slipping away. You know how schedules sometimes just do not work. But finally, Sandy Hart come to me and she said, Earl said, we're going to the Vietnam Memorial if just you and I have to go. And so what always amazed me was she redirected the bus. Now, there were some people on that bus that did not want to go to the Vietnam Memorial, but they went because they were on that bus. And we wound up over at the memorial, and I was able to point to Roger's name on there, and made a copy of it and a picture of it for my son. But to this day, my son just simply will not, he just can't go. He just can't handle it.
You say you found it, but there is never anyone that witnessed him finding it that will forget the emotion, they said, that he showed when he found that name.
Mm-hmm. That wall's very powerful.
It got to me, I'll tell you.
Very powerful. And especially if you know of someone's name who's on there when you finally do find it, and it does get next to you, and then you notice all the names around it, and you think, mm-hmm. You know, these were all young guys too, and it is it's tough on you sometimes.
We could not go out there without wanting to go to all the memorials. The first trip, we didn't make it to the Korean War Memorial. Some did, but I didn't.
Bill McGee went.
And I went out the second trip. That was another part that I wanted to definitely see. I said, I'm not going back out without seeing it. And we went to all three. And the Korean War Memorial, to see those life-size statues of the men during that cold march during the Korean War, and then to turn away, I was so filled with emotion looking at the life-size replicas of the heroes that I spun away to sort of get my emotions in control. And there I see a black wall like the Vietnam Wall, only instead of the names being etched in, were the faces lasered in, a smooth stone, and yet you see the faces like ghosts in there. And that's why I think we need the memorials. The memorial that was overseas is why a lot of people said we did not have one here for a long time, because they said, well, we figured they already had one. But we didn't have the emotion. It didn't touch our hearts the same way if we weren't a part of it. They didn't get the connection with the ones that didn't come home and the memories of what they'd gone through. And I think that by having it in this country, it's allowed people, generations to talk back and forth. One man called the house and said, my kids and my grandkids finally care. I said, they always did care. Mm-hmm. We just didn't know how to approach it. We were told never to bring it up, never to talk to you about it. And one of the gentlemen in Ballard County, Fred Case down there, he said, there never was a World War II. I said, what? Mm-hmm. He said, there was a World War II. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, till 2 years ago. In other words, in Ballard County, because of all this, everybody's talking about it. Everybody is starting to get some idea of what they went through and what they did for us.
Mm-hmm. Tell them about the museum you're building.
I'd like to mention something, if I may. I was talking about Edgar Harrell having such faith in God and it carried him through his ordeal. In 1949, I was needing money, like most veterans, and I joined the National Guard because you got $20 a month, and it was a laugh what it was, but anyway, I got $20, and I finally I was in business for myself at the time, and I just couldn't go to the meetings. So finally, I asked them to discharge me, and they discharged me, honorable discharge. And lo and behold, just a couple of months after that, they activated that company. I think it was Company M, 130th Infantry, and sent them to Korea. And then I got off of the Indianapolis before they sunk it. So, you know, being a Christian that I am, I firmly believe that God had something in mind for me because He saved me. Obviously, those 2 times, you know. So, you know,
I know there's a lot of
things happen to you, you know.
Yeah, there's been things that have happened to me, and I didn't think about them at the time, but I look back on them now, and I think He's left me here for a reason, and that's why I'm kind of lazy. I don't want to do it too soon because I'm really enjoying sticking around right now.
Yeah.
But I know He's got something in mind for me. But I know how you feel.
I want to tell about, I took 12 men. We went down through a draw, and there was a little creek at the bottom of this draw. And as we entered into the creek, why, we knew that the Germans was to our right. We could see them up there. They zeroed in on us with mortars. And I had a full field pack on, and it knocked it clear off my back. I didn't get a scratch, but I lost 11 men. And I was putting tourniquets on them. Arms blowed off, legs blowed off. And I looked and someone walked up and started helping me. It was a guarding angel, there's no doubt in my mind. And he was helping me get these boys bandaged up some. And the barrage of mortars was coming in heavier. And he told me, he said, there's a barn right over there. He said, you got some men over there. Said, get going and run as fast as you can. And I took off running, and I looked back. I thought, well, he'll be coming too. And he wasn't there. That was
quite
talking about God
yeah.
saving you. Yeah.
There's when you're in a combat situation like that,
Yeah.
there's things that happen, and some people might, toss it off and say, it was a hallucination or something. But if it's coming from the heart, then you know what happened out there.
That was real.
That's the important thing.
Was real.
And just like you, your faith is what's helping make you what you are today. And that's why I think it's important that you fellas come on and tell your stories like this. Yeah. And I'm so glad that you all were able to get together and go see that monument, which was long overdue because there was one for Iwo Jima and there was smaller for certain battles, but there was never one, like you say, to honor all you fellas. And my gosh, there's a ton of you. I mean, there's millions of you.
Well, one of the things that took place up there, and I'm sure Maurice and all the rest of the veterans, you'd have total strangers walk up to you and shake your hand and thank you for what we did, during, and prior to that trip, I never, I thought that kind of thing that you didn't even think about things like that, about people being appreciative of what you did,
People took it for granted, I think.
Not everything is sad times with these guys, though. The nice thing is, it's not just World War II.
We
it's
can't
the
tell
fact
some
that,
of those stories, Sandy.
We've connected with a great generation here. And the sad downside of it is we're not going to have them for much longer. The upside is I get to be around them all the time. Once a month, every month. Now, it has been the first Monday of the month, but because there's so many appointments, we have had conflict with some local people. Now, these World War II vets, they don't have to have been ones that went on the trip. Any World War II vets get in the back room of Ryan's Restaurant. It's going to be starting June 2006. It'll be the second Monday of the month to where we get away from first week appointments that people have. But we get in that back room and they just let us own it. These guys take over. We've got we got guys playing harmonicas, standing up, telling jokes. We give away prizes sometimes, and you know, we had the kitchen band the one month, and we just have a ball. The one week, some ladies stepped out and heard some people, and they said, "Who are those people back there? What are they doing?" They said, "Oh, that's the World War II vets." They're always like that.
Yeah.
So people are seeing a really great side of it. They're not sitting around feeling down all the time. And so, of course, there's things that touch your heart and make you sad from the past. You know that. You went through it in another war. But the thing is, they're enjoying life as long as life is there to enjoy. And we do invite any other World War II vets. Now, it isn't just World War II vets that breeze in. The
Right.
kids, grandkids, just sometimes people come in, politicians sometimes, just come in to shake their
You know,
hands
I think
and thank them.
the sad, there's always some sadness. I think the sad part of our history is the way that we treated our Vietnam veterans. But
Well,
I
I do
guess
too.
I can say
I
that
agree.
because my son was it. But that was
I will agree.
that was terrible. And I wrote a nasty letter to the Sun Democrat about it. But
Well, you know, at being a Vietnam veteran, I know that, you know, we weren't real popular when we got back, but as I look back now, I can understand it. I know that a large section of the country was against that war. It was an unpopular war. The politicians didn't seem to be responding to what the demonstrations, and I think I've said this on previous programs, that they took the war out on the warrior. And
Right.
we didn't understand when we came back because we had just done our job.
Yeah.
It's crazy how it turned around after Rambo came out. Then everybody wanted to be a Vietnam veteran, and now you got all these wannabes that are opening museums and this and that. But I do think one positive thing came out of that. At least the troops coming home today are being treated properly with the respect that they deserve.
Yes.
And if nothing else, I'm glad that came out of it.
Yes.
Well, you had us backing you then. We just didn't know how to do it
Yeah,
outwardly.
yeah.
I mean, there were so many of us that backed you back then, but we were told the same thing as with the World War II vets. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. But there's other ways now. Like I said, if I had to do over again, I'd have bought the first cups of coffee. I'd have bought the first meals. I'd have paid for the first gas, you know, full tank of gas and stuff when you guys came home. We just didn't know what to do. I was young like you guys, and we just didn't know what to do. And the fathers and the uncles of you guys were hurting so bad because they fought the war that was supposed to stop it, they thought.
Yeah.
They
War to
did it
end
so
all
you
wars.
never had to go to war. And a lot of them just didn't know how to talk about it when you came home.
Well-
Some of them told me, as I've told you before, that the first time they were able to finally talk about World War II was when their sons came home from Vietnam so that they could get them to try and open up.
Well,
I'd like to
Go ahead.
talk about the biggest hero that, in my book, that there was in World War II, and that would have to be Truman. I
Right.
thought a lot
I
of
agree.
Roosevelt, but Truman would have to be my hero if there was one. We were getting ready to leave Italy. In fact, the 91st Infantry Division, about 2/3 of it was already out to sea. Well, we were getting ready to leave like tomorrow and load on the ship to go to Japan. And they dropped the first bomb. And then they held us up and waited another week. They dropped the second. And we never did even have to get on the ship. But we was already warned that we were going to lose 100,000 men the first day. And our division would have been in the top rank of that right there. So if he hadn't done that, why, there's no telling how many men we would have lost, how many men of World War II we would have lost.
that's one
I'd
thing.
like to show this right here while I'm about what happened here. There's over 5,000 men from Paducah that went to serve their country. And there's every name of all the men.
Surrounding area.
Hmm.
now those are all the men that served. Does that include the casualties?
Oh, no, that's just men that left
Those are
here.
just the men that left from.
Yeah, from here and went into the service, yeah.
My goodness, that's a lot of
Yeah.
names.
I might mention, I forgot to mention earlier that one of the distinctions about the Indianapolis was that they carried the first atomic bomb over to Guam, where it was put on the
Mhm.
That's
and
right.
carried to Hiroshima.
Right.
I know that politically it got to, during a certain time, a lot of the left liberals were going, well, we shouldn't have used that atomic bomb. And my favorite expression that I used to hear from World War II vets as well, if there hadn't been a Pearl Harbor, there wouldn't have been a Hiroshima. So,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, once you sucker punch somebody, all bets are off.
Yeah.
So that now all these bleeding hearts are getting, you know,
Yeah.
everybody wants to win a war, but they don't want to hurt anybody doing it. And that
That's
just
right.
ain't
Yeah.
possible. You guys learned
That's
that.
what worries me about this war we're in right now. People say, oh, we should bring them boys home.
Gotta finish the job.
Then they bring them home, what's going to happen? We just lost 3,000 at Washington, 9/11. That's just a drop in the bucket what will happen if we don't win the war. We have got to, whatever it takes. It may take 50 years, I don't know.
I did a
But
count.
whatever it takes, we have got to stay, we've got to fight. There's no way out of it. Or else they're coming here and then everybody'd be sorry then.
They've proved they can get here.
That's
I did
right.
a count on the computer, and we lose more. I'm sad for every young life we lose. These people who've lost their lives are doing something they believed in, you know, in defending our country. We have lost more young people from child abuse and neglect in the home. We have lost more young people from crazy driving on the streets of America than what we've lost overseas. We need to worry about our praying and our moral teaching and everything, and defending our country. There's no way that we can wrap our children in bubble wrap and stop bad things from happening to them. But the idea that when they come home and I ask them how things are going, and I've interviewed quite a few of them, everyone I can find, I ask them and they say, we're doing great things over there. I mean, it's wonderful if you could just be there and see the change and see what we're doing. I have to go with them instead of what somebody over here that isn't in the middle of it is saying.
One day in '44, we lost, World War II lost over 8,000 men in one day.
In one day.
That
I don't know how much-
freedom is not free.
I don't know how much time I got left, Larry, but I want to make sure that
Yeah.
we know about this book that this lady next to me here wrote about the trip to Washington, D.C. I think this is as much a tribute to World War II veterans as the trip itself, because this comes from the heart of the lady that started all this.
Well, it came from the heart of all of you because their stories are in it.
Yeah, that's
And
what-
we're
Somebody
working
had
on
to put
another
it in
one.
writing.
If there's someone that still needs to get their story into me, again, they didn't have to go on the trip. The trip wasn't just so that everybody could go. It was wonderful, the ones we got to take, but it was also a tribute for all of them. The ones that were too fragile, that couldn't go, the ones that never made it home in the first place. It was for all of them. It was just a way of saying they're here, notice them, we're not going to have them. We still have history walking among us, and they're going to be gone in a blink of an eye. So notice them and find out what they did
And
for
this
us.
has got your fellow stories in there,
Oh,
correct?
yes.
Absolutely.
How many veteran stories do you have in there, Sandy?
Oh, I don't even know.
400 or
I don't know
500.
either.
I don't even know if we've done a
I
count on them.
I don't know.
That's why we need another
Okay.
book. We're working
Oh, no, where can they get the book at? Go ahead and
Walmart stores. This
Ah,
is in the
Wally-
local Walmart
Wally World's
stores.
got
That's,
everything,
that's
don't they?
easy to find. I do want to say something else here, and
Okay.
and Earl went to was it the anniversary of the USS Indianapolis?
I went to the reunion.
The reunion for it.
Yeah.
And I've been to some of I didn't get to go to this, but I went to some of the local reunions that the guys have had. And again, they just have so much fun, the camaraderie, knowing that they're still around, knowing what they did, you know, part of history that they were. And he saw Oliver North there, and he gave him a copy of the book.
oh,
I might mention that out of the 317 that survived, there's 99 of them left.
there's still 99 left.
99 living.
That's amazing.
Last year at the reunion, there was 61 showed up. That's about average now.
So
about
they still
61.
have that reunion every year.
Every other year.
Every other year. Well, fellas, we're getting down to the end of the program here. We got about 4 minutes left. Have you got anything that you want to say either about the trip or your tour of duty or anything that you'd like to say before we close up here?
Yeah, I'd like to say something about it. It was a fun thing, really. The commanding officer called me up one morning, and the war was just over, and said, let's go to Venice, Italy. I said, okay. So we went to Venice, Italy, went out to the island of Lido. That's about 5 miles out in the bay. And so he put me in charge of a hotel, and I had 8 amphibious ducks, them old 10-ton salvage ducks. He put me in charge of them. Well, he and I one day was back on the mainland and picked up some supplies. He said, Gip, he said, why couldn't we just take this thing instead of walking down them steps like you do into the water and just fly off through there? And I said, oh, I don't know. Of course, I think we had maybe stopped at a bar, you know, and we wasn't feeling no pain. And so I backed up. It had 16 forward gears, and I never did learn all of them, but I got it in the best gear I knew how. Probably got up to 25, 30 miles an hour, and that was top speed. And as I went off, it was straight down for about 10 or 12 feet, and then the bottom was sloping out. And here we go. Boat slides to about halfway and pivots, and here we go down. Of course, I'm holding on to the steering wheel, and I made it, and I look back, and he's hanging on to the back end of the boat. Almost out. He got up there, and he said, did I tell you to do that? I said, yes, you did. I said, I'm just following orders.
So you
We lost all the supplies and everything.
I know that I've commented before. Go ahead, Sandy.
No, I wanted to say, you know, a lot of people talk about the money that was raised and that, but I know one of my favorite people that helped pull a lot of strings, different things, was General Beavers. And if nobody's ever met him, they're missing somebody special. Ed Whitfield, I'll never forget him sending somebody out the morning that we left because he'd seen on the news that maybe I was having trouble getting the money together, so he sent $500 worth of McDonald's coupons. And I'll never forget that. And Senator McConnell met us out at Smithsonian. He opened doors on the second trip to get us into the White House and different things. So I did appreciate a lot of things. Every time we're at something, Veterans Day, Memorial Day, whatever, I see these guys somewhere, the two that's sitting by me. But Earl is always got that horn.
That's what
And
I
I'm
was.
always hearing him.
That's what I was going to bring up. Earl is. I found out you've been playing the American Legion taps for a long time up in Harrisburg. So we're going to close the show today with a very special ending. We're going to let Earl play taps for us.